And we are recording on Pearl Harbor on Sunday, December 7th, 2025 at 2:07 p.m. Eastern Time with Mr. Tom Luongo, Mr. Ian Burlingame, Mr. Alex Krainer. You guys have all been on the show before. You guys can go to the description. You can go find all their links to podcasts and Patreons and Substacks and YouTubes and Twitters and all of that shit. And really, the true amount, again, kind of seeing behind the scenes, the true amount of knowledge I know about this show is that it's happening today. And as of a couple minutes ago, I know that EM required us to get firearms. That's as much as I know. So I don't know, I'll hand it over to
Podcast guns. It's
podcast.
an
Oh,
American
because we're
thing,
bullying Alex because he can't have
right?
it.
No, I brought an extra one for Alex.
There you
So
go. We're gonna airdrop that
You
to you,
guys are
Alex.
going to be arrested in the UK because you're causing people anxiety.
Joke's on you. My friend, I saw him the other day. My buddy in the UK like 3 days ago tried to buy like a hoodie with an American flag on it, and I'm not getting the bank canceled his card. So that's where the UK is. So I will never fucking be there.
yeah, I was gonna say, I think my showing my face at this point on a podcast induces anxiety in just about everybody, especially the Juicebergs. So
Yeah, yeah.
welcome to all the hardcore anti-Zionists out there.
And yes, Tom is my Zionist handler because it,
Absolutely, I am.
it's again, I told you at a certain point though, I just want like a better conspiracy. Was it the Joker and the Dark Knight? He's like, this city deserves a better class of criminals. I'm at the
Agreed.
point now where like retarded early me used to try to argue with them. Now I
Right.
just want like a better class of conspiracies. Like give me something that has no, I don't know, no objective reality. But yeah, and Alex can't have his weapons. But yeah, I don't know. It's Tom, would you like to denounce why you're not a Zionist?
No, I don't want to do that because then that actually validates them.
Then they'll stop paying
So
you. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, well, no, the whole idea is that if you engage with it directly and not agree and amplify. So yeah, I kill, we hang Palestinians in the backyard
Yeah.
on every Thursday night. That's what we do. And it's a good time and we do barbecue and everything. And you're all
Do you
more
wear
than
the
welcome to
little
show up.
hat?
Yeah, I have a tiny hat and everything. It's good. Yeah. And I have a dreidel and I have a little fake like next time I come on, Tommy, I'll make sure I get my over the ear ringlets. We'll
Alex,
get that. We'll get
Yes,
that
would you
out.
like to say
Alex.
something?
Alex.
Raise your hand.
Thank you. If I may make just a modest proposal here,
Yes.
that
A sweat.
you're um, generally people who listen to these podcasts are people who will agree with us on probably 9 out of 10 things. And I would say that we are at such a critical juncture in the we are at such a critical juncture that we shouldn't be dissipating the troops and turning on each other over the over the 10th
Sure, fair
out of
enough.
10 things.
I
So,
Yeah,
agree.
yeah, yeah.
Agree.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
let's say that not everybody sees the world in the same way. Not everybody connects the dots in the same way.
Right.
We'll converge on the future, on truth eventually.
Hmm.
You really gotta
Yeah.
come in
We'll
here and
converge
make
on the truth eventually, but let's stick together through this. It's kind of
that
too important.
that's a
It's
fair
the way
point.
I agree. I
That's a
agree completely, Alex. So yeah, no, absolutely. And
that's a
that's why I find all of this so unbelievably obnoxious. Like, we have a situation here that, as EM and you and I, we've talked, and Tommy, we've talked about this is a war. And at a certain point, we either have to, be in the foxhole together or not. And there comes a point where there's going to be some disagreements, but at the end of the day, like we all have to be pulling in the right direction and trying to figure out how we can, you know, get to the truth such that we're not carrying water for our enemy by being distracted by psyops
yeah.
and being distracted by nonsense, like obvious nonsense. So
Yeah.
let's, you know,
Yeah, it's the meme of like like the two Roman guys that look pretty similar, but there's some difference between them that only they can tell, and they're like, "Fuck you, I'll never fight with you." And then like the next panel is just like I don't know some African warlord, and they turn back and they're like, "We are more similar than previously thought." Like that's kind of where we're at.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, the idea is that if you can slice and dice us up over the things that we may not see, eye to eye on, that's how you win. That's the essence of divide and conquer. It's the essence of divide and rule.
That's how estrogen
And
works.
yeah, of course,
So
yeah,
if we
reputational
can
attack.
Yeah, maybe something to start with, Tom. Something you and I messaged yesterday, and Alex, I watched a show of yours. I can't remember who it was with here recently, but this weekend's been rather extraordinary about the amount of money spent anti-Hegseth on Saturday, Friday into Saturday, and then we are Europe, and this is our flag Saturday and through today. And we have the three great estrogens of Europe meeting in London tomorrow, Macron, Starmer, and Merz. And so I'm wondering from, Alex, from where you're sitting, what can we expect next week?
What do you mean in Europe?
Yeah.
I have no idea. I have no idea. I mean, it's so insane here that people are ready to flip out because they're being pushed to the people are being arrested over complete nonsense. In Ireland, the guy Enoch Burke gets life imprisonment because he refused
Yeah.
to
But
use
clarification, I
uh,
saw a correction on that. It was 100 days.
Enoch Burke.
Yeah, yeah, the dude that for misgendering someone.
I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Please
I'm
check
just,
it
but those are, I'll look it up. Those are
because
quite a difference.
he's already served a bunch of time in prison. Then they let him out, and then they put him back,
All right.
and then he got handed a sentence that's effectively he could be in prison for life for refusing to use correct pronouns. And then you have people getting arrested because they went on vacation and they went clay pigeon shooting, and they posted pictures of themselves with those guns. And then people are getting debanked left and right.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, it's getting insane, and now I see they're trying to ramp up a pandemic again. It all started like um, 5 years ago, and now they're reporting like some really terrible flu season in Spain somewhere, and they're showing videos of hospitals with all these beds crowded in the hallway. And so they're obviously there's shit that they're not telling us.
Mhm.
But I think we're at the precipice of some kind of a really bad financial event, which is
Mhm.
why they want to lock us down. And then all this shit that's going on in Japan isn't helping because Europe is very powerfully exposed to anything crashing in Japan. And now, on last week, the European 10-year bond pretty much capitulated. It hasn't made new post 2022 lows, but it's like it was trading like this, and then on Wednesday,
Mhm.
and then Thursday stabilized a little bit, and then on Friday, once more. And if it goes through the 2022 lows,
Mhm.
watch out below because I think that there's no support. And
Mhm.
I thinking we're looking at a multi-year bear market in bonds, meaning interest rates. European economies are shrinking, so the government tax base is shrinking. At the same time, when they're massively expanding their budgets and government spending, especially on weapons, which is unproductive spending because you're basically wasting society's resources to build shit that's meant to be blown up, not to support the consumer economy. And so there's a quiet rage in France, I think elsewhere too. I see that, like for example, in Croatia, you would say nothing's going on there because we're solidly in the uh, EU NATO camp, but you should see the fight erupting between the political factions. Not fist fights, but like one side is saying, "Oh, we must prepare to go to war against Russia." The other ones are going out and saying, like, "Are you completely insane?" And so all of this is now starting to polarize the society, and I assume that the same is going on in other European nations. So what's going to happen? I don't know, but it's not going to be smooth sailing. It's just going to get really, really bumpy. And I hope it doesn't go to the point of civil wars. But at
Yeah.
this point, who the hell knows?
Yeah, no, you're Alex, it's interesting you brought this up about the European debt because I was just finished recording my Sunday market report for my patrons, which is why we're doing this in the afternoon because I'm busy on Sunday mornings. And I was going over this exact thing. I was doing some cross currency analysis with the euro yen cross, the dollar yen, the 10-year JGB, the German US 10-year spread, all of this stuff. And what I've noticed, I noticed all of this stuff, and I think um it's too much for me to like cover here, but let's just say that, yeah, the Italian German spread is collapsing. Everybody's moving into Italian debt. The French Italian debt is curve is so the money is moving into Italy. It's moving out of Germany. The German 10-year closed at 2.8% on Friday, and they had to massage it down into the close because it was trading at 2.82 on the European close. And that would have been a blowout. That's only the second time in the last forever, God knows how long, that it's closed above 2.8%. Lagarde's been trying to defend 2.75. I think where they are, honestly, is that they're beginning. What I've noticed in the past, right, is the Europeans have been gorging themselves on American debt since Powell started raising interest rates 3 years ago, right? And a lot of what was happening was there was a lot of manipulation of the US yield curve. You'd see it, when they wanted to sell the story that the United States was failing, they would go in and they would sell 10s and 30s and they would buy 1s and 2s in order to create a yield curve inversion, right? What we saw this week is that the inversion in the middle of the belly of the US yield curve is nearly gone. The 1-2 spread is down to -3 basis points, or the 2-3 is down to -8. We haven't seen numbers this low in years, like years. And the 1030 and the long end of the curve isn't moving either. So what I'm saying is that normally you'd see the 10 to 30 spread and the 10s to 30 sell off, and we'd see a concomitant buying on the 1s and 2s. We're not seeing that. So really what's happening is Europe is selling everything. The pound and the dollar weakened slightly, right? Because they're selling bonds in order to get dollars because dollars are drying up. And then at the same time, the Japanese are allowing the long end of the curve to free float, which is creating a mess on the euro yen cross as well. So if you just take a 1-year chart of the dollar yen and the euro yen, what you'll see is the following. The dollar euro cross, and then the euro yen cross. You'll see that for the first half of the year, the Trump administration was purposefully running a weak dollar policy. And they did that until they got a trade deal with the EU. When they got that trade deal, the euro and the dollar have been basically trading within a very tight band around 116 for the rest of the year. But the euro yen kept rising, meaning the yen was falling and the euro was strengthening. So the Japanese and the United States are putting the collar on the Europeans by not allowing the euro to fall because they desperately need it to fall. It's too strong. So with that happening, their only move now is to start selling US treasuries in order to get dollars to then, stabilize their markets because their dollar liabilities are huge. And that's going to then put upward pressure on bond yields, as you noted. And I think we might have finally gotten to that moment where we have the catalyst for all of these things to happen all at once. And what I think is going to happen on Wednesday or this week is that Ueda at the BOJ is going to raise rates and Powell is going to cut rates. I don't think it's going to be dramatic, 25% basis points in the US, and Ueda is going to raise either 25 or 50 on the long end. Japan has been given its independence finally by the United States, and they're being allowed to start normalizing monetary policy and unwind the massive yen carry trade. And the ones who've been gorging on the yen carry trade have been the Europeans. And so that one is going to hit Europe the hardest. That's the TLDR and everything I just said. So
I think
and that's not going to mean that the United States is not going to get hit hard here. I think you're going to watch Powell have to intervene to keep things stable if we're going to watch a disorderly unwind of the yen carry trade, and expect the zero hedge crowd to go with the printer go burr memes about Powell for the next 3 months. But that's what's going to happen. But that's his job, is to protect the U.S. domestic repo markets and domestic banking industry. So
This is the first time the Japanese have been independent from Europe, from the British, since the Meiji era.
mm,
Sorry, could you define independence? The only thing I ever know is just like, after World War II, where like,
Financial independence.
all right.
mhm.
They get to set their own monetary policy. The Japanese have been a British project since the Meiji era.
Which
And
goes
it's
back to when, which
specifically
goes back to when,
to late
I
1800s, early
1850s
1900s,
thank you,
right? Yeah,
to 1850s, 1860s.
yes.
thank you.
And specifically as a weapon to be used against the United States in the Pacific, and therefore also the West Coast of the United States, West Coast of Canada, et cetera. But this is the first time, so watching this coincide, having spent years of my life living in Japan, studying the language and the culture for most of my life, it's a rather fascinating thing that the two most powerful figures in Japan right now are women. That's never happened before.
Mhm.
That's an old boys club. Now, there have been Japanese empresses in the past, very strong women, but that's a long time ago, right? Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago. It is a very interesting thing that these women are in there breaking the old boys club. Well, who's the power behind them? Well, the prime minister is half American.
Takeishi?
Yeah, her father was an American soldier, if I remember correctly.
I didn't know that.
Um, Ian, with regards to Japan being a British project since the Meiji
Yeah,
Restoration, and them turning the Pacific into a Japanese lake, yeah, you've been reading naughty history books, haven't you?
yeah. Well, my family was involved in creation of the Oregon country here, and that
Uh-huh.
was all tied up around the same, well, actually earlier, but it was all tied up in that same thing. But yes, Japanese have been a British project.
Yeah. Because
And
that's not what they taught us in school, right?
oh, it's not, and it's an interesting thing that MacArthur made sure that that continued after World War II,
Mm, mhm.
right?
Emperor
And
MacArthur.
and then good old MacArthur got removed from duty. Now, I'm a big fan of MacArthur's, by the way, as a
Should have
leader, as a
given him the
man,
50 nukes. Fucking stop being a
right?
pussy, Truman.
Well, wasn't that simple, but so it's a very interesting thing to me. What you just said, Tom, and
Mm,
then the two women in power, breaking the old boys club in
mhm.
Japan is a thing we've not seen in the Pacific in centuries, probably really going back to the British taking China, or
Wow.
maybe the Chinese or the British giving up Hong Kong, which they never actually gave up, which is
Mm-mm.
actually what all those color revolution attempt in Hong Kong was about some years ago,
Mhm.
right? But what we're seeing right now in Japan is a thing that reshapes the Pacific fundamentally. Well, if you're going to do, as you guys have talked about so well, shift the map to the Pacific, what's the
Mm,
one other major financial power? Because they're not
mhm.
a, you know, um, industrial power anymore, but they went through that phase enough to become a financial power, and they are still a cultural power in the region,
Mhm.
particularly because most of Japan's manufacturing over the last 50 years has been done outside of Japan in ASEAN. And they in South Korea, now that's another problem we've got to figure out, and I'm not seeing that one getting addressed, but it doesn't have the same capital impact. But South Korea and Japan are the biggest investors, direct investors in ASEAN.
Yes.
That's a British project,
Mm,
right? That's a British
right.
project to try and McKinder China and the
Mm,
US at the same time. So this, what you're talking about, Tom, seeing this, and then tying that together with the two ladies now, a female prime minister who, if I remember correctly, her father's an American soldier. Now, I think he abandoned the family when she was young, et cetera. But family's family, connections are connections, et cetera. And she was a heavy metal drummer, I think, heavy metal band drummer. She's an interesting lady. She's somebody to look into, right? Um, but this is a
already.
seismic shift in support of what the two of you have been talking about the shift of the center of gravity of the map of the world.
Yep.
You couldn't have ARC if you didn't have Japan broken free of this British Amsterdam Venetian system.
Yep. So now yeah, no, that's fascinating. And it's really funny, actually, you're saying all of this. And I'm like, I'm not a huge, I don't know a lot about Japan. I'm going to like be
Cutting much
frank and honest. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that you mentioned that we now have a female prime minister. I go back 20 years to, and this is going to sound like a non sequitur, but it's really interesting how some things saw the future early. Artists get there first. If you go back and you rewatch Ghost in the Shell standalone complex,
Big
season
fan.
2,
Yeah,
big
yeah,
fan. Remember
yeah.
the prime minister
Yeah,
in
yeah, yeah.
season 2 is a
Yeah.
female who's being attacked by the
Yeah, yeah,
intelligence
yeah.
services
Yeah.
in order to be and yes, and then to start a nuclear war.
Yes,
To get the
that is
United
right.
States to go off half cocked starting a nuclear war in order to maintain the existing system.
That's right.
That
That's
was
right.
that was the plot of season 2 of Standalone Complex. So, Kageyama, the writer, saw the future, certainly in both seasons of that show. And it just speaks to how the Japanese see themselves. If you watch certain animes and you watch them carefully, you see how they think about all of geopolitics. If you watch things like Space Battleship Yamato, Standalone Complex, and others, Akira, others, you see the way they see this stuff. Even Cowboy Bebop to a
Yeah,
lesser
yeah, yeah.
extent, right? So it's very interesting how the Japanese artist class and their writer class have seen this stuff, and that's why I find those things interesting. Just another layer on this whole thing. So yeah, I'm just like the
So
more I
I
think about
would,
it.
yeah, in support of what you're saying, Tom, what I would
Mm,
expect is more sophisticated support because this is a seismic shift for Japan too, and let's not make any
and
mistake there.
right.
And they're trying to flood, foreigners into Japan for the first time in its entire history.
Hmm.
And that's run up against, not a hard stop yet. I'm praying to see a hard stop.
Right.
Um, and that's why she came in and her interior minister, that's not the right title, but another woman, right? And they're both the
Foreign affairs.
anti-immigration, yeah,
Yeah.
foreign affairs. So
Hmm.
um, I would suspect that we would see now we have a problem there. I was in China as investment banking analyst in private equity as well in the early 2000s, 2005, 2006. The color revolution British stuff was trying to happen in China, and they were initiating by stirring up anti-Japan hatred. And it got so quick, it went so quick, so fast that the Chinese government sent a message out over every single phone in the country, both foreign and Chinese phones, and shut this thing down. They shut down the telecom networks because they were getting so many people up in arms. So what I would expect to see is, and I've been seeing it here in the last few days, the last week or so, is this anti-Japan sentiment being tried to be stirred up in the Chinese population.
Yeah, that's the same. It's similar to when Abe first took power and the CIA created an MI6 created a dust up over the Senkaku Daioh ions, which then, because at that point, interestingly enough, that was when Japan and China had just signed an agreement to start using each other's debt as reserves
Yeah.
because the Chinese Japanese trade was so big at that point that they started to do this, and the yen was very strong at that point. It was trading in the 70s. Uh, Seriously, the yen was trading at 75 to the dollar. And then Abe came in. Abenomics weakened the yen, and they started a dust up, and that went kinetic really quick. I mean, we had Chinese like firebombing Toyota dealerships and Honda dealerships, and it was crazy how quickly that was flared up. So
So because of their control of China for 100 years or so, and then Hong Kong beyond that, the British have millions of Chinese around the world in their pocket, ready for
yes.
them to stir up all kinds of things and point the finger at China.
Hmm.
Same thing
Yeah.
with Russians.
Yep.
Unfortunately, they also got tens of millions of Ukrainians now who very few of us can tell the difference whether they're Russian or Ukrainian. And
Mm,
hell, I talk to Russians and Ukrainian friends of mine. They're like, yeah, we have a hard time telling the difference too, depending on who they are,
right.
right? So where do we see, it looks like Italy, but where's the Japan equivalent in Europe?
It's Italy. I think the Italians are being given their independence, but they're
But
watching
you,
papers.
but you got two types of independence you have to have there. One is from the
Hmm.
Vatican Bank,
Yeah.
from the Vatican, and the other one is
Agreed.
from the EU.
Agreed. Agreed.
And those have to be addressed very differently,
Also agree.
right? Like look at the property owners where a lot of these immigrants, so who got most of the monies for, moving immigrants around? It was Catholic Charities. And then look at who were the property owners of a lot of the rental properties around Europe, the UK, and here that those people go into. Do you think the Vatican's going to give that up?
No, 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 no. So it's interesting that we're talking about this, and the reason I brought up Italy directly is not just because of the bond spreads and the way the market is seems to be pre-positioning for a big move by the Italians. But Maloney comes out this week and says we want our we want our gold reserves back from the EU,
Uh,
and
Yeah, isn't that insane?
didn't Hungary do
though
the same? Somebody else did the same.
right,
Yeah,
well, yeah, but the Hungarians, they have their own currency. They still have the
yeah,
forint, whereas
that's
the
true.
Italians are on the euro. And a precondition, from when we were talking about Italy or exit when Salvini first came to power, 10 years ago, Mario Draghi, when he was at the ECB, said, "Oh, you can leave if you want, but you owe us your Target 2 liabilities and we have your gold. So you can't have your gold back if you want to leave." Now, interestingly enough, possession is 9/10 of the law, right? 50% of the Italian sovereign gold is in Rome. 25% of it is at the Mariner Eccles building, and the other 25% is in Europe and in London. So the Italians actually control most of their gold, which I didn't know when that happened the other day, and I made mention of it on the market report, and then all my patrons were like, "Oh, by the way, that's where it all is," because I was just talking about it off the top of my head, and I didn't have a chance to go look it up, and yeah, so that's a very interesting moment, right? It's an interesting bit of information. So Maloney wouldn't make that statement if she wasn't prepared to follow through on it because, well, at the end of the day, if she's backed up by the American military and the American political force, there ain't a whole lot that those Target 2 liabilities, they can whine and complain in Brussels all they want about it, but
So who do
that's
we?
on you. That's on you, folks. You're the one who swapped all this debt around, not me.
So
Like, you know what I mean?
Who in Italy is the real power? Because it's not her,
Of course.
right? I remember when they all came to the White House and Trump turned her and said, "You're very pretty" or something. And what was it? That's a statement. I've seen that kind of statement before with women. It's like, yeah, don't get ahead of yourself.
Yeah,
You're here because you're pretty, and we're here because you like you, and we're here because you do a good job.
right.
But don't think that you're playing at the same table.
Oh no, I don't think I think Maloney is very much aware of her position, and I've been saying about her from the beginning is that her role is like Trump's. Is survival is all you have to. Survival is the win for her. Stay
Yeah.
in power, allow the deep state around her to lose their minds and play their games and their machinations, and then just kind of attrit them out over time, and then play possum and play as play by the rules as much as possible until a situation arises where you have the ability to make your move to assert independence. That's the way I've been analyzing Maloney for years now, and I'm like, so far, and is this call for repatriating and taking control of Italy's sovereign gold? Is that moment?
It's a signal. It's
It's a
definitely a
signal,
signal.
certainly. It's definitely a signal.
Alex, I want to go to ask you a question. Jen, you were on again some guy Cosm or somebody's show. I can't remember the
Apple
name.
copy.
I think so. A couple days ago, um, and you articulated about you were talking about the Russian Revolution. The Bolshevik. The Civil War become a Bolshevik revolution. Numbers of people killed. You were talking about the United States and the United States being set up for that. Primed for it. And I think you're absolutely right. So do most of the guys that come from my world. the special operations and intel world, not so much the finance world. Those guys seem to still not get it. But one of the things I wonder about this, I suspect that the Europeans know they can't defeat Russia in a fight, but that's not the intent. The intent is to use Russia as the excuse to cover for the collapse and to use build up for war as an excuse. But the real intent is the United States and the English Commonwealth, the British Commonwealth, and to unleash civil wars there and to back it with logistics, manpower, Azov leadership, highly experienced war fighting experience, all of that. And they're trying it, of course, in Eastern Europe, but they're getting their marching papers handed to them at the border, right? Mostly.
I agree entirely. It's almost obvious that they're doing it because they're not going to stop. And the
No,
whole empire,
no.
the whole empire doesn't even make any sense without the United States being a part of it. And so now, Trump doing course correction, and especially now, like Thursday, with publishing of the new what's it called? New security strategic doctrine, whatever document, it's very clear that he's basically abandoning them. And for them, this is completely existential. So they will do everything
Yes.
in their power to try to topple Trump and maybe even completely topple the American constitutional order. And I think that this is the reason why they have vacuumed up all these tens of millions of immigrants from everywhere. I
Hundreds.
think that this is um, why they have been pouring so much money into things like Black Lives Matter and LGBT and Antifa and all of these people, including um, including arming some of them and training them how to use arms. And so you now have perhaps millions of people who are ready for a revolution. They need, they need you need like a catalyzing moment, like a polarizing moment. And then you'll probably throw in a good number of jihadis that the Brits control, and you're going to get a good number of Azovites from Ukraine who are going to take charge.
Yep. Yep.
And and then you have a recipe for a disaster. And of course, they also control the media, so everything's wrapped into this.
Well,
Uh, no kings. Trump is overreaching, uh, and on and on and on. And so I see great danger because the playbook is almost exactly the same
yes.
as the way they overthrew the Tsarist regime. And
Yes.
the people in the States might feel a little bit relaxed because, like, you can't overthrow, you can't do that shit over here. Well, they overthrew like a 300-year regime that had a continuity of government under Romanov, and everything intertwined with their cultural norms and traditions and the Orthodox Church. And so it was a very unlikely success, but it was a success.
Because of how they did it.
Yeah, because they've been building up to that.
For decades. I mean, look at all of the prosecutors, the district attorneys, sheriffs. Look at all of the ports in this country, the main ports.
Yeah,
If I was going to do a whatever revolution, I was going to overthrow the United States, right? And these inertial days, they don't care which one of these factions comes out dominant in the end. They don't care because they're going to control them, and then they're going to take them out Stalin style and shoot them.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So they don't really
Correct.
care which of the factions succeeds. But if I'm, as a unconventional warfare, dirty warfare trained guy, an intel guy, targeting guy, when I look at the United States, we are completely and totally and absolutely primed to be taken down. And primarily by being not invaded by armies, but by logistically, but by our enemies logistically supporting local forces that are led by foreign, because the Bolsheviks, by the way, did bring in people from all over the
Yes.
world, even
Yes.
guys that had fought in the Boer Wars and else, they brought British leading or British connected peoples from all over have been fighting these kinds of dirty wars and send them in there. They weren't Bolsheviks
They sent probably as many as 25,000 people before the revolution took
before.
place.
Yeah.
And then when the Civil War took off,
Yeah.
it was 300 to 400,000 troops,
Yes.
Japanese, American,
Yeah.
British, Czech,
Yeah.
Greek.
Yeah. Which at the
Yeah, there
time
were,
was a disproportionate number.
Yes.
Today, that would be millions, right?
yeah.
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 Yeah. Huge.
One of the things that Richard Poe was bringing up when he was on the podcast the last time we talked about it was that the sheer number of there were multiple wars and multiple armies fighting in the years after the initial
Correct.
revolution,
For
and it
20
was
years.
right,
Yeah.
and it was
Yeah.
Churchill actually managing a lot of the White Russian forces, and he was being told to manage the White Russian forces to fail because they
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
wanted, so a
Correct.
Yeah,
lot of this
because they
was going on.
pretended that they're allied with
Correct.
them. They
Yes,
pretended that they were allied
Correct.
with them because supposedly they were against the Bolsheviks and the communists.
Yes. Yes.
But they managed them to failure. They kind of like
yes.
maneuvered them
Correct.
off the cliff.
Correct.
No different than when we watch in places like Syria and other places. The same
Correct.
thing. Same
Okay.
thing.
So,
And whenever these conflicts look incomprehensible, they're not incomprehensible. They just don't fit into a simple narrative, whatever the narrative that we've been told is. It's always something far more ugly than that. And it's
Well,
designed
you
it's
put
designed that way on purpose. Go ahead,
you
Alex.
put the city of London into the
Yeah,
into the puzzle, and then suddenly the whole picture makes sense.
exactly.
it's the
But we're not
catalyst. Yeah.
allowed to talk about that.
The decryption key.
Yes.
But it's not just City of London, right?
Right.
That's where things flow through. But this goes to
Mhm.
The Hague. To Amsterdam. This goes to
Mhm.
Venice. This goes to Rome. This goes to
Yep.
the other places that they are centered. You were talking about Venezuela, and
Yep.
you're absolutely right. And I've articulated this before as well, I think, with you gentlemen. But Venezuela is, City of London HQ in the Western Hemisphere, just the
Mhm.
same as they had set up for their Devil's Legions, right? Which is this
Right.
composite of intel, paramilitaries, terrorist organizations, cartels. They've all been brought together under the same umbrella, same leadership structure, same financial structure in the global war on terror. That's what it really was. It was a mob war, and it
Mhm.
took control of all these entities. Well, if you're going to take down one of the most powerful nations in the history of the world, wouldn't you want all these forces and elements under your control?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Wouldn't you
Of
want
course.
to flood them into that country ahead of time?
Of course.
Right? So now let's talk a little bit about death numbers, death tolls. Because here's what they're counting on. These people are bureaucrats, right? The ones running the show, right? The
Right.
ones that everybody says, well, they're just not competent enough. I'm sorry. They do hire the smartest people in the entire world straight out of school,
Right.
right? Who are
Mhm.
either ideologically or financially or otherwise aligned. Or in many cases, because as we all know, the best educated people are usually the dumbest when it comes to these types of things, right?
Right.
It's not doesn't mean they're dumb. It's just they don't understand dirty war, right?
Right.
They don't understand when that pretty girl's fucking with them, right?
Right. Mhm.
Excuse me, and not flirting with them. The way in which these people think is numbers, and in this case, it's numbers of dead. How many are they willing to? How many do they need to kill in order to attain and then sustain power across time? Statistically, looking at Russia, I did the numbers this morning. Statistically, if you look at Russia and China as the two biggest examples, but there's others, Cambodia, elsewhere in Africa, etc. What their numbers turn out generally to be is about 3.5 to 4.5% of the population is killed. 3.5 to 4.5%. Right now, since it's not just the United States that's the target, by the way, it's the entire English-speaking world.
Right.
Right? It's the US and the Commonwealth. They are trying to wipe out the English civilization. Why? Because like the Russians and the Chinese, we're the only people that have something that we could actually rally around. as a
Right.
civilizational force to organize ourselves that cuts through all the psyops and all the noise and all the et cetera, right?
Hmm.
If you combine the US and the Commonwealth together, that 4.5% works out to about 31 million people dead
Where?
Across
in the
the.
English speaking world, the Commonwealth in the US, right? This is how these people think. They are willing to kill 31 million of us, roughly, right? These are estimates in order to maintain power. Now, that doesn't mean they killed 31 million at the beginning, right? If they can do it with 2 or 3, 4, 5 million dead at the beginning, then they'll do the rest through camps and forced labor and assassin, all the other kind of, murder and all that other kind of stuff. But this is how they think. On our part, we're going to have to, in order to preserve ourselves, we're going to have to kill a lot of people. Maybe not 4.5%, but maybe 1.5 to 2%, 2.5%. That's 10 some odd. What is that? Almost 20 million people.
Mhm.
And what they're counting on is that we won't do it, that our instincts, our good nature, our instincts, our desire to believe in a good world will not allow us, our morality will not allow us to do that. They're
Hmm.
counting on it, but they're already planning. And oh, by the way, this is just the English speaking world, 31 million, but they're talking about reducing the world down to 600 million. You think they wouldn't blink an eye killing 50% of us to
Look at the
win?
war. Look at the war on transportation, on food, on medicine, and this
Everything,
and everything. Like they're
everything.
attacking. They're attacking everything. But
So,
somebody
mhm.
said, but somebody blew up the Georgia Guidestones
So,
because, and which was a way of saying, yeah, bring it.
well, I don't know if the Georgia Guidestones weren't blown up by some people that some of you know, the British, if we want to call them that, but really the
Mm,
Praetorians, right? The Praetorians, because it was telling too many things, right? But the point I'm getting at is this, we're all talking all these higher things and we need to see, but
right.
the way their calculus works is we have this many foot soldiers over this period of time. We can grow up to this many. We got to think in terms of war. In this period of time, let's say 20 years, because it took roughly about 20 years, if I remember correctly, for the Russian civil war become revolution to finally settle out. Um, their calculus is in numbers of soldiers, fighters, not just soldiers, but fighters, and the number of enemies killed. And their numbers historically for these types of people, they're pretty comfortable killing about 4.5% of us to gain power and hold it. What are we willing to do on our side? Because that's how these things work. They're in everything. They're everywhere. They're flooding
Mhm.
us with all kinds of people for this, in this case, very much, Alex, to how you articulate, but for this violent ant jar, right? And the
Yep.
problem is that you can't just sit and wait it out. It's not like you're going to go to your compound in Wyoming,
Right.
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Look at the Russians. Russia is huge, and most of it was, the most of it was very inaccessible. But over a 70-year period, they got everywhere and killed a whole lot of people, a whole lot of their own people, and that's the point, right? This is our own killing our own with support and backing of external forces.
Well,
Yeah.
the Russians mostly killed their own people,
Yes,
if not pretty much all of,
pretty much
you know,
until World War II, right? And then that was end the war.
yeah,
Right.
correct.
But again, that was still the Soviets who were willing to kill that many Russians. And that number is
Yes.
not even added into, the numbers that I gave, right? That number is about half. Well, maybe it's about a third of what Russia
Well,
killed on
okay.
their own.
You see, I read, how do you call it? What's the word for population study?
Uh,
Demographics.
Demographic study. Yes.
Yeah, I read like a demographic study that because like first a whole bunch of people got killed during World War II, World War One.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there was the Civil War, another, I don't know how many millions, 10, 20,
Yeah.
30,
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
people
Mhm.
say. Then there was World War II, 27 million, 16 million Russians. But then in the aftermath of the World War II, there was
The
still more
purges. Yeah,
killings
yeah,
and
yeah,
purges going on,
yeah,
millions.
yeah, yeah.
And so what this demographic study was saying that if Russia didn't go through all these cycles of violence and it continued the demographic trends from before 1913, that Russia would today have between 500 and 600
Yeah,
million
yeah,
people. They have
yeah.
140 some,
Yes.
145,
Right.
6.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, this
Yep.
is what people need to start really thinking about. These folks are all in, and this is
Hmm.
how this is what they're looking at. They're looking at, okay, we've got most all these, so the current administration and power elite are doing everything they can to try and, fight at that level. But at some point, this is, I don't know, 85% right now going to go hot. And millions of people are going to die right here in our own countries. And again, this isn't just the US. This is going to happen in the United Kingdom. It's going to happen in Ireland. It's going to happen in Australia, New Zealand. It's already happened in South Africa. Rhodesia's already gone.
Germany almost certainly, France almost certainly.
Hmm.
Yeah, well, I don't know about France and Germany, possibly, right? But, Germany's been decimated twice in the last century.
Hmm.
This was done to Germany twice in the last century, right?
Yep.
Otherwise, Germany would be in a vastly, Germany might be 150 million and vastly richer than it is today and vastly more influential than it is today,
Hmm.
right? Where were the Napoleonic Wars, same thing against
Right.
France. And then
Yep.
World War One devastated France,
Hmm.
right? Not as many French died in World War II, but it's okay because, the Napoleonic Wars and World War One. So again, these folks do think in terms of population control, but they don't think in terms of population control as in terms of the planet. They think in terms of control.
Hmm.
How,
Yeah.
what do they need to get the populations and what type of people do they need to make sure survive and what percentages so that they can maintain control, right? This subtle and again,
Hmm.
this all goes back to Rome. People need to stop actually looking at Roman history as the history of Roman legions. There were never that many Roman legions to build and maintain that kind of an empire. Never. It was all this, what we now call British power. And we're right to call it British power because it's Rome 2.0.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was usually proxy armies recruited
Correct.
from the barbarians, and then the
Hmm.
Roman legions usually spent more time fighting one another than fighting any foreign enemy.
Correct.
Yep.
And it wasn't
Hmm.
just the proxy armies, it was where they put them. So they were against populations. And then it's how they created these ant jars, even including in the British Isles, they created these ant jars,
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
right? So I'm wondering, right, this
Right.
week with Mert, the three great estrogens, Mertz, Macron, and Starmer, meeting together in London, and our own great estrogen, Obama, having been there several times. If, you know, my suspicion is Europe is rearming under the auspices of Russia, but in reality, their intent is to logistically arm and supply conflicts here in our own lands.
Hmm.
Hence why
Yep.
Canada is so critical and why they're going all
Oh
out in
yeah.
Canada and why they're doubling the population with people that are not English speaking. Well, they are English speaking, but they're not from native English speaking lands.
Right. No, this is correct. Like we weren't we were at one point. I was chatting with Dexter White, and he said, within a year, if facetiously, like within a year, we're going to be at war with Canada if we're not. And he's like, and then we kind of laughed. He I'm not even kidding.
We have to be.
And yeah,
We
well,
have to be.
Canada and
Because that's
Mexico at
the
the same.
staging ground and it's all the natural resources that Europe
Yes.
needs to rearm. There's nowhere
Yes.
else they can get the natural resources.
Agreed. Agreed completely. It's very obvious to me that that's what has to happen. And the Canadians, and certainly the Western Canadians, need to understand what the stakes are. And and we have to, this is where we are. And again, I guess like the back to some points you made earlier, EM, to think about geography. Why is it that it's so important that they have these Democratic governors in these very important port cities and waterway
Or
controls.
mayors as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's very, very important on the ports on the West Coast and the East
Yeah.
Coast, the Great Lakes, all of that. They're trying to lock all that
Well, and it's
down.
not just the seaports, it's the airports,
Yes.
ports
Yep.
of entry that are air, and then
Hmm.
Canadian ports of entry and
Hmm.
Mexican ports of entry. They're
Hmm.
all heavy,
Hmm.
quote unquote, Democrat, because I don't want to label this as Democrats because the Democrats are completely infiltrated and overrun, right?
Of course. Of course.
Um, Give me 1 second. Everything that I look at as a warfighter is that we are completely primed for a civil war in, violent insurgency here that's going to be supported from the outside,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And
No, I agree.
that the the two powers that would find ways to support us in this fight, the Americans and the English and Australians, et cetera, are Russia and China. And this is
Mhm.
why all of this anti-Russia China stuff, and I hate to say this about virtually all of my intelligence friends, but most of them have fallen for all of that.
Yeah.
Now,
Agreed.
less of them, Russia is kind of falling away because they're starting to realize that we wouldn't be a country if Russia hadn't helped us 3 different times,
Right.
right? But we don't have that same relationship with China, history with China. Why? Because
Hmm.
China is really an inward, it's called the Middle Kingdom for a reason. They look inwards. They don't, China has never been an outward looking force, right? That's not their culture and society. Um,
And what and
mhm.
there's something just to pop in on that, just in case this is something to think about with China. When you watch China getting colonial like, right, Belt and Road, what they're doing
Yeah,
in
yeah, yeah,
Africa,
yeah.
they don't do it very well, right? They do it very kind of ham-fistedly, and that's not their natural state of
It's not
being.
there. No.
And so therefore, while you should be worried about what they're doing, clearly at the same time, it's not their, it's like Russian logistics are never going to be,
Well,
military logistics are never going to be air
how do you
and road track. There's always going to be military because that's their
how
military
do you
doctrine.
compete with a financial logistical or a financial logic system that goes back 2,000 years? And you don't have any of that knowledge or experience, but they do,
Right.
right?
Yep.
So Chinese have been trying to build out a competitive infrastructure, global infrastructure
Hmm.
to the British system. It's
Yep.
just they don't have Britain's, the Romans 2,000 years of history of doing it.
Hmm.
Right.
So
And that's
what's
the
our,
other thing with the sedition, right? Sedition's all tied up in that as well,
of
because
course, of course.
people are talking about, I hear guys, well, we'll just take the ports. And it's like, you do realize that then you're in urban warfare in the most populous, dense communities in our country.
Right. Yep.
That's really what it is, right?
Hmm.
And you don't know in the early years of the war which military units are actually going to be loyal to the Constitution, to the country, et cetera, and not side with some faction somewhere. That's what the sedition stuff was really about,
Hmm.
right? People really need to look to the Spanish Civil War as the primary example, I think, of where this is going.
Keep talking.
No, well, you had the Republicans, quote unquote, Federalist Republicans, you had the Marxists, you had all these factions, right, that
Hmm.
went to war with each other. And they each had their own military units that were loyal to them. And
Hmm.
then they had their auxiliaries and their undergrounds. And they had, the Nazis were supporting some factions, and the Russians were, Soviets were supporting other factions, and the British were supporting other factions. And it was just an all out factional war. It didn't shape up under Franco until a couple of years later.
Hmm.
And all of this was cities on cities. If you look at the Spanish Civil War, it was cities and regions against cities and regions.
All right.
And a
So,
lot of what they were doing is assassinating their own people inside those cities and regions to keep those cities and regions,
right.
aligned with whatever the external power was that was backing them.
Right. All right. So with all that said, let's shift off of the background of where
Mhm.
we are,
Yeah.
and let's talk about how do we fight it, because we have some historical precedent. We look over to Putin and how he's handled it in places like Belarus and Kazakhstan and Georgia and others, right? How do you manage this? This is what's interesting is like the other day you wrote a piece about Hegseth and
Mhm.
which I really liked for a variety of reasons. And which is that, the reason that they're all out for Hegseth is because Hegseth's not going to play games. He's just going to, he's more than happy to kill whoever needs to be killed in order to stop what needs to be done, what's happening,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
sees it from that perspective. It's why Trump has renamed the secretary, the Department of Defense, the Department of War. It's
Correct.
why he's offering, massive signing bonuses to people to become members of ICE. You don't think ICE is not going to become a military, another arm of the military? Because that's your urban combat units.
Well,
That's beefing up
mhm.
your domestic urban combat capability
Yeah.
in order to deal with this situation.
And look where ICE HQs are located. Very much to what you're saying.
Right. So,
Where?
um,
Sorry, I don't know where.
Los Angeles, San Francisco Bay Area, San Antonio, all these heavy blue port cities.
So
right.
New
points of
York,
entry,
ports
what
of
you were
entry.
saying.
Hmm.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
And some of
Hmm.
the transportation hubs, right? So it's not
Right.
just ports, but ports of entry.
Right. Transportation hubs and whatnot.
Yeah.
It's why
Yeah.
Trump moved people into New Orleans the other day.
Yeah.
Right? Because you got to protect I mean, if
Yeah.
they've got control of the West Coast, they've got control of the East Coast, and they've got control of the Great Lakes, then you have to protect the mouth of the Mississippi. It's why you have to. It's why
Yeah.
you have to go after Venezuela because it's the
Yeah.
entry port into the Gulf of
That's
America
why
or the
you have
Gulf
to
of.
go after Portland because you have the port of the Columbia River and the
Right.
only inland port, deep water port in the West is up here in northern Idaho, which services all of the Pacific Northwest to include Canada.
Right. Right. So this is very, very clear, and this is why I think if we circle all the way back to where Alex and I were at the beginning of the podcast when we were talking about the financial stuff. Like one of the way, and this goes back to something you and I talked about, EM, one of the first couple of times that we chatted together, which was that, first you take away their public money, then you
Yeah.
take away their private money, and then
Yeah.
you start
Well, the
forcing
illicit
them,
and then the private. Yeah.
and then,
Yeah. Yeah.
well, yeah, the illicit money, then their money.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Public, private, their money is the way I
Yeah.
like to
Yeah.
put it, right? When you look at it from that perspective, that's where you have to kind of start arguing, or putting the argument on the table is where we in that level of the war as well. Because if the Japanese are getting their independence from that perspective, then that becomes a very interesting counter move in this
Yeah.
scenario, right? So I find it all very interesting, and not just and interesting is not quite the right word. I think treasonous is actually the proper word. But when you look at it like that, that's the way we have to be analyzing the battle space at this point. We have to be analyzing all of these battle spaces at the same time.
Well, I want to be
And
careful though. Okay. I want to be careful because when you are thinking through war, you have
mm,
strategic, operational, tactical levels,
mhm,
and you have to look at all three layers simultaneously.
yeah,
And most of the conversations that I'm hearing are either guys talking at the tactical level or the strategic level, which is the stuff that, normally we talk. And we've
right,
got to talk operational level, which is all the managerial logistics, the unsexy stuff in the middle.
right,
And then we also have to talk about tactical, but the real tactical, not the tactical that the tatted up, sleeved, buffed guys are talking about,
mhm,
right? Because that's not, I mean, they're very good at what they do, but you can go out and kill a whole bunch of people. And if they're the wrong people, you're going to lose
right,
ultimately, right? So I want to go back to something, Alex, about Russia, right? And Tom, this is for you as well.
mhm,
When we look at the Russians gaining their independence with Putin as the lead, not as the sole guy, we have to remember that what did the British and Dutch, Roman folks do? What did this old Praetorian system do? It launched two brutal Chechen wars and vast waves of terrorism,
mhm,
Yep.
right? Brutal wars.
mhm,
And they had to get put down, and a lot of people died.
mhm, mhm.
So
Correct.
Yep, yep,
we
yep,
as Americans need to steel our hearts. We need to harden our hearts. They are all in on war. They are all in on willingness to kill 4.5% of us, 30 million people. And they'll go beyond that if they can get away with it.
Right. Yeah, no, agreed completely. And it's, yeah, no, and that's where I don't have any time at this point for those who don't have enough, stamina, or, you know, whatever you want to call it, for not understanding what the problem actually is. I mean,
Well,
we as commentators in the space have a responsibility to go, this is where we are. And like, it's not going to be, nothing's going to be perfect. There's no scenario like this ever survives contact with the enemy. At a certain level, the enemy has agency. And I hear a lot of people complaining about, legalese and this and that and everything. I'm like, guys, like, when you understand the nature of what the actual conflict is, and when you actually accept that this is the nature of the conflict, and it's not the fake conflict that's been dangled in front of you, it's at that point that you have to realize, oh, what we're watching is the moves being played out in that context, the one we played out here, and you're going to watch them win a battle, they're going to watch them lose a bunch of battles, and it's going to go back and forth. And the first time Trump loses a battle against these people, you can't like go, oh, fuck off. Like that's not the way this works. You have to realize it's a war, and it's going to happen. It's going to keep going until it's over. And
so it burns itself out is really the
all burns
honest.
itself out.
And then it's a matter of who's the most dominant survivor when it burns itself out, because what we're dealing with is insanity, quite literally.
Mm-hmm.
Structured, organized, institutionalized insanity. That's what these Praetorians are.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But never underestimate insane.
Never underestimate people who just want to see the world burn.
Yeah. Alex.
Here's where I see danger. I've been noticing that a groupthink has formed against Trump. And I think that goes back to Epstein files. When they declined to release the Epstein files, people started flipping on Trump. And I think that it's created it's created like a momentum into which people are pouring more fuel. And practically, it's come to the point where even people I considered intelligent and reasonable are now spouting shit that just doesn't make any sense at all. And even when like events and circumstances force them to acknowledge that Trump has done something well and right, they go like, oh, well, yeah, because he's lusting after the Nobel Peace Prize, or he wants real estate deals, or he just wants to make money for his buddies and his cronies. So like it's like they're kind of painting themselves into a corner of taking this snobbish anti-Trump position because, oh, he betrayed the MAGA, oh, he reneged on his promises. He's an idiot. His administration is total chaos. Nobody knows what they're doing. And so now when something good happens that couldn't have happened by accident, because you won't have like a hurricane run through a junkyard and randomly assemble a car, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So now they have to go like, oh yeah, okay, well, he did that, but that's just because he wants the Nobel Peace Prize. It's like he's still an asshole. And I think that now it's come to a point where a lot of these very smart people can't own up to being wrong.
No incentive of any
to-
kind is allowed.
So they have to keep beating up on Trump on any pretext. And so I think that that's because, like, you need to think of the United States as a ship sailing through a freaking 5-force hurricane, and Trump is your captain.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So I think that people should think twice before they're going to turn on him, because if he's a traitor, well, then by all means turn on him. But if he's not the traitor, and you turn on him, you're putting the whole fucking ship in jeopardy.
So Alex,
well, preaching to the converted,
brilliant.
Alex. I've been screaming about this for months, but yes, but you are absolutely correct. Yeah.
So if I might, Alex, the great peoples who have been brought down in human history, all their elites, their, too many of their people who could have fought for their survival fell into one of three or all three combined areas. And it's very much what you're saying. When blood is obvious, where even I heard Tucker Carlson the other day on Sean. I just caught a snippet of it because I don't really pay attention to either of them. But Tucker Carlson said we're either going towards a total totalitarian state or a revolution. When you have people like that who can smell blood, that's it's this
Mhm.
instinctual smelling of blood. What generally happens is they don't want to do that because they're not fighters. They're
Right.
talkers. They're not fighters, and they don't want to go down that pathway because they don't know where that's going to go because they're not fighters. And so what winds up happening is, and you'll hear this, if you read the stuff before the Russian Civil War, much less and all the way through the Civil War into the Bolshevik Revolution towards the end of it, if you look at a Maoist China and, early China, 1920s, 19 teens, 1920s, Chinese intellectuals, et cetera, but, all of it over and over again. French Revolution, right, in the 1730s and through the 1770s, what you wind up with is this whole middle class, really, right, and upper middle class and lower upper class people who mask their fear and cowardice as virtuosity and
Yes.
intellectualism.
Yes.
And what they do then is they use that as an excuse to not be loyal.
Yes. Oh, we're watching this. We're watching this. The entire libertarian right is doing this right now here in the United States. And I've been calling them out left and right, all of them, to a man. And it became very obvious to me when I went to the Mises Institute last year and was summarily rejected. When I said it's time for us to get off the sidelines and become, part. We have our opportunity to actually make a substantive change. We have an administration coming in that's going to fundamentally change things. That's not going to be perfect. They're going to argue for, they're going to do things that you're not going to like. But if you understand the totality of the situation, you realize that we have these institutions, we have these assets, and we have to think of them as assets that can be used for our benefit to move us forward. And it's going to be a jog right to get a jog north
Quantum walk. Yeah.
to go. If we want to go to the right, we might have to go north. We might have to go, up north a little bit, or we may have to go south a little bit if you're talking, authoritarianism versus liberty or whatever. We're going to have to do things. We're going to have to do it this way to get there. And it's just the way things are. And I've been stressing for years that order of operations matters. Like, it's not just, oh, this is our position and therefore blah, right? It's a state function. It's either a good thing or a bad thing because it's either free market capitalism or it's bad. Like, it's nonsense. Like, we can't have that.
Well, the honest truth is, Tom, at this
mm,
point, we don't have any of those things.
I know we don't have
We're in
any
a
of those things.
liminal state right now, and
Yes.
the thought or concept that we have any of those things to hold on to win is ludicrous. We don't have any
Mm,
of those things. Any
I
of
know.
the isms, or we're at war.
Right, exactly. And so what I'm
Yeah.
getting at here, EM, is similar to I've made this point. I think I've made this point to both of you before. I
Mm.
think it's important to remind is like we are in a similar place to where the Russians were when Putin took over in 2000. The army could bear, the army was not at the army was dysfunctional. The country was dysfunctional. It was falling apart. Abortions as a percentage of live births was 10 to 1, and alcoholism was everywhere, and like the whole country was falling apart, and you're without hope. We have 100,000 people dying a year of fentanyl. It's part of the war.
Yeah, but I want
I
to be
mean,
careful here. They've done something. They learned from their failure there,
mhm,
and they flooded us. The United States, realistically, and anybody who looks at these flows of people, we're about 100 million illegals.
mm,
We're about 100 million. Europe is about equal, and the Commonwealth as a whole is about equal. This is about a third. I think we mentioned this before. This is
mhm,
about a third of a billion people that have been flooded into our lands that do not adhere. So the thing that the Russians had when they finally made their move is they were a
mm,
homogenous people.
mm,
And so we had to send the Chechens in there who were Russian, but we
right.
had to send, the old Cossacks and the old insults, etc., in there, and we try to use Islamic terrorism to overthrow the Russians. They learned from that, and so they flooded us with about 1/3 of our population or 1/4 of our population of people who don't belong here.
Mm.
Do you think any of those people are going to fight for the land, for the
No,
thing that they're counting on is that we will not kill in the numbers that they will. They're counting on that.
I know. I know.
That's
I
very
know.
different than Russia. It's very different than what China went through in its transition here as Xi and et cetera are recovering. The problem is our enemy learns. They don't just always repeat the same playbook.
Right. I know.
And
I
what
know.
they're counting on is that we will not kill in these numbers.
And that's why again it goes back to what you were talking about with Hegseth earlier in the week, that Hegseth is a guy who is willing to do that, and Trump has put him in charge, and that's why he's the guy that they desperately want to get rid of, and that's why we have you know um it's why he's going to war right now. He's setting the military up against the intelligence services,
Yeah.
because the intelligence services
Yeah.
are going to be the operations guys.
Yes.
Am I correct about that?
Paramilitary. Yeah.
Right.
Paramilitary guys. Yeah. That's the
Right.
devil's legions. Yeah.
Right. So that's that. And then if you look at what they said this week in the new strategic, stance or whatever,
Mhm.
whatever that document was called, it was very clear. Look, non-state act. We're not considering cartels, for example, anymore as purely non-state actors. They are backed by state organizations, and therefore they are fair game. That is our
Yeah.
doctrine, whether you like it or not. And I read the whole thing cover to cover the other day. I sat out here with a cigar, and in the cold, it was 25 degrees out here, and I was like scrolling through, smoking a cigar, and I read the whole thing, and I was reading it, and I had two voices in my head. I had the voice and my voice going, "Yep, absolutely, this is what we need to do," blah 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 blah, and then I had all the naysayers. I had all the non-fighters in my on my other shoulder going, "Oh, these arrogant Americans! Who the fuck did they think they are? That they have the right to do to talk to these about these people this way and have the right to survive and blah blah blah." Yeah, fuck a whole lot of you. I've been tamed so far today. I'm like, yeah, that's nice. You guys don't matter. And this is the thing that pisses me off more than anything else. Present company excluded, Alex, but a lot of these voices are European. And I'm talking
How
about people
dare
that are
you?
on our, yeah, I know, not you, obviously. But I'm watching a lot of these people really show their loyalty. A lot of people swallowed hook, line, and sinker, and Americans too. I'll call out people like Judge Knapp. I'll call out people like Ray McGovern and others. I'll call them all out. Like fuck this, fuck these people. I know, Alex. Let me do one last point. Then
I'll
Mr.
just
Cotter,
I'll
I
just hold
get
my
it.
hand up.
Yeah, yeah. No, all I'm going to say is that like these people have all decided that Russia's the good guy and that America's the bad guy. It's this Pepe Escobar version of fucking geopolitics, and I just don't buy it. So I don't talk to these people anymore. And I'm dead serious when I say this. I'm like, I'm done. We're fighting a fucking war, and we're Americans, and I can go on. I used to be able to go on podcasts and go, yeah, but you have to preserve the American Constitution. It's the only legal document, founding document that puts the people in, in a superior position to the government on the planet. And if you don't think that those people that we're fighting don't want to destroy that and destroy that in the minds of all of humanity, that was a bad idea.
Well, but
If you don't think that
Tom, if
that's
I
what's
might pause a
animating
moment,
them,
Alex,
yeah,
I want to hear from you. But Tom,
yeah,
I want to very much what you said. What we need to be careful of is the entire Commonwealth falls under English common law and the
mm,
English Constitution and the
mm.
English Bill of Rights. That's why this is an English civilization-wide conflict,
I agreed, agreed.
right? So, Alex, before your arm gets tired.
Yeah, thank you. So here's what I wanted to say, Tom, and this is, like this is not coming out of like a sentiment of niceness. This is coming out of a sentiment of absolute strategic necessity. Most people, when we reach common understanding, will fall on the same side. The fact that they have different opinions means that there are things that they don't understand.
Yes.
And I think it's exceedingly important to try to convey the reasons to them because you want them on your side.
Mm,
Because if you tell them you're a
agreed.
fucking idiot, fuck off, then you've given them to the other side basically. I think
Alex,
that it's I think it's hugely important um, that we try to attain a certain clarity in messaging that people understand, that people at least become aware of the actual dangers because many people just don't see any of these dangers. They look at the headlines and they're like, oh, the Republicans, oh, the Democrats, oh, pro-immigration, against immigration. They don't realize that there's like a bigger ulterior plan behind all that. And then you tell them like this, look, if I'm wrong, I'm going to be a big asshole and it doesn't matter. Nothing happens.
right.
But if I'm right, please take what I'm telling you into account and
Mhm.
pay attention because once you start paying attention, you're going to start seeing it everywhere.
Here's Alex. I agree with you 100%. And I'm telling you, I used to have these conversations with these people 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and then all of a sudden, all communication stopped. They didn't want to
Yes.
hear
Yes.
they didn't want to continue that conversation.
Yes.
When we try, I'm dead serious. I would call them up and say, "Hey, let's do a cast. Let's chat. Like, hey, we're friends. Let's chat." Vapor. This has been
Yes.
going on for a while now, and it's been
Yes.
building for a long time to
Yes.
this moment. And this is not. I am. What I'm voicing now is my frustration because I could see this coming when everybody started to hive themselves off into their own little echo chambers and not actually try to keep engaging with each other. And you and I've talked about this before, and I've mentioned this before. I'm like, I may be like the big asshole, right? But the thing about it is I don't like to fight with people. I certainly don't like to fight with people in public, right? Um, and like, so if we're not going to be able to have a civil conversation, fine. But at the same time, there's no reason why we can't sit down, set the ground rules. Hey, let's have a civil conversation and then move forward. But we can't do that. And what
Right.
I've noticed is that we're at a point now where everyone has decided to harden their position, again, either because of business model or
Instinct.
instinct or their personal background or whatever. Like everybody, I've always said, everybody reverts to type,
So,
right? You revert when you're under stress and you're under anxiety, and this is a natural thing. And this is me being as generous because I do it. We all do the same thing. We all kind of eventually revert to who we always were, especially when we're now looking at, okay, my time horizons have gotten really short. And now all of a sudden, all you can do is you're in fight or flight mode. And when you're in fight or flight mode, you're not really listening to other people. And I'm going to cop that at times I'm in fight or flight mode as well. Not going to argue that point. I'm going to cop to it and say yes. And there are times when I do it when I go on a show and I'm doing it and I'm not at my best. And I'm like, I have to come back later and either apologize or try and, make amends. I don't see that level of generosity or level of self-reflection coming from a lot of other people. And I'm
It
right.
doesn't
serious when I
matter.
say
It
this.
doesn't it doesn't matter.
Okay, fair.
It doesn't matter. Like you remember Thomas Sankara,
Hmm?
the Burkina Faso guy before
Oh, right, right,
Traore?
right, right. Right.
Remember? Well, he was making this point. He was saying like, for this to work, I have to continue to explain.
Yeah.
I can't ever get tired of explaining. That's where the whole battle is.
Hmm.
Putin's still explaining to this day, 20
Putin's
Hmm.
years
still
later.
explaining. Yeah,
Agreed.
So
that's where the whole battle is, which is why we don't have the
uh,
luxury of losing people, especially not over bullshit.
okay. So Alex,
Agreed.
I'm going to agree and disagree from a war fighter. Okay. There is, people need to look at the 30 years before the Declaration of Independence in the United States, where a vast amount of this articulation of why the grievances with the crown in great detail and how these who and what were conducting these grievances and why and what were the the ways in which the crown and the people could work through the grievances. And, Tom, to your statement of, no perfect deals, but those were good deals. And so for the 20, 30 years before the actual Declaration of Independence, which was a declaration of we will stand and fight in blood if necessary, there was decades of work that laid that groundwork. We've been going through that for the last 25 years. When they launched COVID, it told people, pick your camp. This is for the normies. COVID was about the normies. It was about driving the normies into a narrative camp that they can then feel safe and secure. And doesn't matter because what was COVID? COVID put them in a camp. When somebody picks a camp, they're in that camp. It's virtually impossible to get them out of that camp.
Mhm.
What was the seditious six, and what is the stuff coming out of Europe now? Now it's for the fighters. Now what they're articulating, and it's not so much for the war fighters, but what their articulation is now is the elites that have the strings that they can. And when I say elites, I mean that about as loosely as I possibly could say, right? But now what's happening in London tomorrow, but that's a continuation of conversations been going on for the last 6 months. And what just happened with the seditious six here in the United States is a declaration to the is a articulation to those who can pull the strings of whether we go start killing each other or not, that they have to pick a side. They have to pick a camp.
Yeah.
When we get to this place, yes, you're absolutely right. We need to continue. Even
Agreed.
when I'm face to face with my enemy, gun in hand. Right? Well, not gun in hand, but before the battle, I need to have a conversation with them and say, listen, there's one last chance.
Yep.
But we're at that place right now where we haven't pulled the guns yet, and we're not at one last chance just yet. But COVID drove, you can see it if you take a step back and look, it drove the normies into camps, and we're almost never going to get them out of there. Now, some have come across because of the injuries and the vaccine injuries and other things, and some came across just because the very act of forcing people to pick a camp got them to think.
Right.
But nothing anybody was articulating, no rational, logical. Well, no. It's just the very act of being forced into a position where they had to pick a camp got people thinking. Well, we're beyond that now. Those camps have pretty much been picked, and they're pretty much balanced out. They've pretty much worked out who's going to be for the normies in which camp. We might get some defectors here and there, but they don't matter at this point. Now they do matter as logistical support, material support, etc., political support, but they don't matter in the battle. Where we are now is we've just had political leaders, CIA associated, and then the MI6 and BDU connected, because Mertz is a BDU product, by the way, and the BDU is a direct product of Galen organization, Major General Galen, and that is directly from MI6, from Strategic Operations Executive or Special Operations Executive, and MI6, German intelligence. Mertz is a German intelligence asset, not a British asset, but German intelligence is British intelligence. Right? Okay, give me a second. Where we are right now is these leaders that are the ones that have the quasi authority to take us to blood, to guns, are now picking camps. That's the declaration that's happening in Europe. That's the declaration that just happened here with the seditious six. We are going to blood. That was their declaration. We are going to blood, and you in the war fighting, you in the levers of power have to make choices. Those that have levers of power over these things, right? Life and death. You need to make a choice. And it's a declaration to the war fighters. We're going to blood, and you're going to have to pick a camp too. That's where we are. Now, you're absolutely right. We need to keep articulating these things the best that we can. Why? Because we need to minimize the bloodshed.
Great.
More than anything else, right now, we're in a position where we need to minimize the slaughter. We know their numbers. Their numbers are about 4.5% of the population is where they're willing to go comfortably. It's also what they can do logistically, materially, manpower-wise, et cetera. Okay? But that's where we are. And we all need, our conversations need to be a little bit more honest about where we are in the cycle. Not calling for it, not asking for it, but I'm not the one that called for sedition. Sitting U.S. Congress people did. I'm not the one sitting in, in Germany, France, and the United Kingdom in a position of governmental power calling for war and arming the people and drafting young men to go fight and die. We're not doing that, but it's openly being stated, and we need to be serious, honest with ourselves enough about what that really means historically. That means blood has already been decided.
And it can also, and blood can be spilled through the attacks on financial markets by destroying the economic welfare of the people. And then
Correct.
that's how you set people against
Correct.
each other, going all the way back to what
Correct.
Alex and I talked about earlier with the bond markets. And what I've been saying for 3 or 4 years now is like the target of all of this stuff is the US bond market. Because
We
the
are the
United States,
target. The U.S.
oh, yeah.
is the target all writ large. Yeah, yeah,
Agreed,
yeah,
great. But
yeah.
but you know,
Yeah.
when we were talking about like a lot of like the political stuff, the trying to set portions of the United States against each other, all
Yeah,
this
yeah.
talk of, oh well, the United States is too big, so it should just break up. Like, no, 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 no. The United States cannot break up until it's organic. We cannot have that happen until after the people who have brought us to this state are no longer on the game board. And then if we decide, for example, that
Correct.
the left coast can't live with Mississippi, that's fine. Okay. And it's the same thing that's kind of happening. Um, oh, I just had it in my head. It's the same thing about Ukraine, right? Like, why does Trump? I think why both Putin and Trump want an end to this war, not just because obviously if you can get rid of the conflict, then they have no way to go to war, right? But like I've when Trump's 28-point plan was leaked to the public, whoever leaked it is irrelevant. A lot of commentary coming back to me about this was, well, hey, Russia will never accept this because Odessa's not involved, or this is not involved, or that's not involved. And I'm like, no, no. Like, Putin can look at this and go, the framework for this plan is such that if it is agreed to mostly in principle, the guarantees are all NATO and the EU about Ukraine's future. But this whole plan is going to ensure that NATO and the EU don't survive this. So all of those guarantees 5, 10 years from now won't matter. And Putin and Russia can get Odessa back without firing a shot.
Peacefully.
By just peacefully. We can do this way. We don't have to do it with a conflict.
Russia's going to flood into Ukraine, and they're going to rebuild Ukraine fast, just like they have the portions they've already taken.
Right, like what
These
they've
are
done in
their
Mariupol
people.
is for
Correct.
example, what have they've done in Mariupol is nothing short of astonishing, right?
They're going to do it because this is their people that are suffering, right? This is, to the Russians, this is a civil war caused by and supported by the outside, and they're never going to forget that, and they're going to do everything in their power to help their people recover.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Agreed.
We've hated Slavs for, the Western Europeans have hated Slavs for a long time. I'm writing a piece here it'll come out this week sometime, about the underlying fight here, which is really the Holy Roman Church, Holy Roman Catholic Church against the Orthodox Church, which is original Rome versus Rome 2.0. And that's what's underlying all of this. But I digress. Alex, we're not keeping you from feet. Well, it's literally what's underneath, and then
I agree.
Who drives these conflicts? We can see it in Europe now with Kaya Kallas and all these crazy blonde women. It's all genetic. It's all estrogen versus estrogen warfare. Get the men to go kill your genetic competition.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Slavic women are beautiful. That's a threat. That's a threat worth killing a bunch of Slavs over.
Not going to argue with that.
I mean, honestly, man, let's just take this stuff back to reality, right?
Yeah.
Anybody, again, Tommy and I have had this conversation a couple of times, but everything we're seeing is a fractal of a bar fight in a freaking college bar with fraternities and sororities on a Friday night. We put all kinds of fancier words to it and all this, bonds and geopolitics. It's just a slugfest at a college bar on a Friday night after a big game when the sororities and fraternities are figuring out whose lines are going to get to breed with whose, and whose lines are not going to.
Mm-hmm.
That is all it is.
Right? And Tommy and I have seen it face to face. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but man, it can get brutal.
Mm-hmm.
Brutal. Those pretty Southern blonde girls, ooh, they could be mean.
Oh yeah.
right? But that's the
Oh
honest truth. You know, I mean this more and more I look at this, and I'm writing this in the novel as Rome Burns, right? The more and more I look at this, it's just Western women are upset that Slavic women are just so much more attractive and so much more womanly than they are. And so they're willing to drive the whole world to war again.
See, I'm a Slav and I used to be married to a pretty Southern girl.
Oh, see, well, there's some pretty Southern girls.
oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah. There are. Dude, I spent 38 years in Florida. Like, don't talk to me about coming down from New York when I first showed up at University of Florida at 18 years old. I walked around. And the ugliest girl on campus was prettier than the prettiest girl that I graduated with in New York. I'm like, oh, dude, I don't know what I'm gonna do down here.
That's what it is.
I
It's
don't even
just
know how to
that
talk to
Europe,
these
the
girls.
European women are just really upset that the Slavic women are so much better looking than they are, and that European men are more and more attracted to Slavic women because they're still women. I mean, look at the marriage rates. Look at all the women out. I know a whole number of my friends married Croatian women. Beautiful, beautiful women. Serbians, right? I got a friend of mine here, right? Married beautiful Serbian woman. Maybe things are that simple. Also
I
that
have to,
dangerous.
I have
That
to,
dangerous, right? Yeah, go ahead.
I have to tell this
Yeah.
anecdote. I have to
Okay.
tell this anecdote. So, a Serbian friend is like a banker, or was a banker anyway.
Mm,
He had lots of money from Belgrade.
mm,
And so, let's call it 15 years ago, he marries this young Serbian woman who is a complete knockout, like literally a fashion model,
yeah.
but also a PhD in psychology.
Oh,
And
dangerous
so
woman.
they come on
Yeah.
vacation to Croatia, yeah, and they rent a house on this island, and they're like, oh hey, like if you're around, come spend a day or a weekend with us. So I'm like, oh cool. So I brought my kids there, and we spent a couple of days together, and I swear to God, guys. She's like really beautiful, but I mean like 10 out of 10. But
Yeah.
she's Serbian. And so we come home, we sit at a table, come home meaning from the beach. We sit at a table, shoot shit, smoke cigarettes, and she's coming out with glasses and water and wine, and she's cooking away. And I'm kind of like I married an American woman, right? So I'm kind of like, well, shit, like maybe we need to help her a little bit. And the guy's going like, no, no, don't worry about it. Just sit down and enjoy. And so she comes, she starts serving food. And I'm like, hold on, let me help you. And she's like, no, no, no. You the man. You sit here and you enjoy yourself. I'll be bringing the food. So I was there with my two boys who were very little at that time. They were toddlers. She like served us drinks. She served us food. She took all the food away. She washed up. She put the kids to bed, two of theirs and two of mine. Like I wasn't even allowed to do anything. And then at the end of when everything was done, then she comes out, has a glass of wine with us, has a cigarette, and then like, okay, guys, good night. But like, I'm not talking about like a babushka with a thing.
Yeah.
I'm talking about like a woman who's like a top model and a PhD in psychology, but who has this um, thing of like, I'm a woman, I'm a wife, and I want to make sure that my man is okay and that his guests are comfortable and that they're having a good time. Like not a slight tinge of complaint,
Yeah.
resentment, of thinking like I should be really sitting down with you and you guys should be running
She
around.
had pride in it.
Exactly. She had
Yeah.
pride in it. She wouldn't even let me pick up my
Yeah.
plate and my glass
Yeah.
to take it to the kitchen and put it in the dishwasher. Nothing. And it's 21st century. It still exists. It's just that we've been brainwashed to think that this is oppression, that
Yes.
this is wrong,
Yes.
that
Yes.
like, and
Yes.
I having married an American woman had the whole other thing where like I had to take care of everything and she didn't need to do shit. And it was normal because everybody says so. You know what I mean?
So here's why I think everybody. I think here's what, and I'm terribly sorry, guys. I'm gonna have to run. I really
Mhm.
appreciate the conversation on a Sunday. Um, what I think TDS is, Trump derangement syndrome, is a whole bunch of estrogenics, males and females, pissed off at Donald Trump because he has such a beautiful, brilliant wife, Slavic wife. I think down underneath of it, because honestly, people need to understand it's resentment, it's envy.
Mhm.
This is what drives everything. It's the book I wrote, The Eternal War. I think
Mhm.
they're pissed at him because he has this beautiful Slavic wife who speaks 5 languages, carries herself extraordinarily well,
Mhm.
raises a great, incredible son. She's extraordinary. I know people who met her. She's an extraordinary lady. I think
Mhm.
that's why they're pissed off at him.
And probably tamed him at the same time.
Probably.
Yeah, yeah. I know. I see that. I can see part of that.
And fits with his existing children, all of them
Mhm.
different ages, extraordinarily well, no conflict, right? I think that's what it is. I think what's driving all this shit in Europe right now and here is Western women are just really terrified of Slavic women.
Mhm. It's very possible. It's the most novel theory of why I think we're going to have World War III. But I'm not gonna argue with it. Like
Well, it's not
it's
like
certainly
Western women haven't tried to wipe them out 3 or 4 times before.
yeah, of course. Like, and it's funny. Like we say all of this stuff, and it's certainly an angle on this, and it's worth having the conversation to at least illuminate that angle on it. Not that
Yes,
it's
yes.
driving every
No,
aspect
no,
of
no,
this,
no.
certainly, but it
But
is but it is an angle.
women are
It's,
powerful and women are the power. And right now, if you look at who's driving Europe specifically to war,
Mhm.
it's all these blonde-headed women.
Agreed. And they were put in those. I think they were put in those positions in order to fight that way. I think it was done on purpose.
Yes, I agree.
You know,
I agree.
and almost all of them are childless too.
Yeah. And look at the women here. Why they want to put Kamala Harris in there?
Why they want to put AOC in charge? Why they want to do this? Why they, all of that. I agree. Yeah, no, I'm okay with that. I've been saying, it's funny for years ago when I was early on in this, I was chatting with my friend Halsey on an early live stream. We were talking about Tulsi Gabbard a long time ago, well before early on in the process, and I said, the only problem I have with Tulsi at this point is that she's childless. I hope I could hope for nothing else for her than for her to, you know, become a mom, because then I would be like, okay, I can, whatever
Now I can
fears I
trust
have
you.
of her, now
Yeah.
I can trust you. And what a shock. She left service.
I'm pretty sure that Tulsi is watching this podcast, and I just want to say, if I can help, I got two. I
I'll
I'm
Well,
bump
I'm
her
well,
husband off
I'm
for
right
you.
here. I'm
yeah,
right here
well,
for you.
and
I'm right here.
we also know, like, obviously that, when in her time when she was out of Congress, was she left Congress in order to try and start a family, and then, sadly couldn't
Yeah.
do so. So
Yeah.
I looked at her psychology and I went, oh, she can't be a mom of a family, so she now needs to become the mother of. She needs to sublimate that maternal instinct by serving
Yeah. No,
the
absolutely.
the the
Yeah, yeah,
the,
yeah, yeah.
the, the administration.
Other
I think
people's
she's like,
children.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the
Like
way I look at
I have a childless aunt. She's one of the most extraordinary women you ever meet.
it.
She's my brother and I, my daughter.
Hmm.
That's the only grandchild right now. She's like a parent to us. Has been
Hmm.
since we were young. Yeah. All
So,
right,
yeah,
guys. I very much appreciate it, but I'm gonna.
I think it's about
Yeah.
time. The sun's
Yeah.
going down. It's getting cold out here. I need to go inside. So,
Well, and Alex has got to feed some children's.
No,
yes.
not today. Not today. Today they're with
Uh,
their mother. So
uh,
All
I'm
right.
off the hook. But I have to finish reading the National Security Strategy document because I'm
mm.
only halfway through.
I read it the other night. It's very good, Alex. You'll enjoy it.
Tell me this. Does
Hmm.
it uphold the right of men to have babies anywhere? Because I'll be really disappointed if it doesn't.
It might have been a subtext if you read it, like, if you read it sideways, then yeah, like, I'll invoke the
Between the
grandmas.
lines,
And
right?
if you read it
It's between the
sideways, and
lines.
you mix all the words up, you might get there. Yeah, absolutely.
As long as it doesn't allow for men to continue to be babies, I think that's a step forward.
And on that note, guys, I think that's a
Appreciate
good place to end. Guys, wonderful chat. Have a
it.
great weekend. Tommy, thanks for
Yeah.
putting this together.
For everybody listening, please
Have
go to the
a
description.
good
Yeah.
week, everybody.
For
You
everybody
guys as
listening,
well.
please go to the description. Please go follow them on Twitter. And if Tulsi is listening, I am younger than Alex, just food for thought.